Then, what's this? Oh, this is even better. They get better. So this is in Taunton, and for those of you who don't know where that is, because I didn't have a clue where Taunton was, it's in Somerset. And they speak with a very different accent. Anyone from that part of the world? Or you are? Are you not? Are you? They do speak with a very different accent. So it took a bit of while for me to actually understand the people I was talking to on the phone. Because this deal was done all on the phone. I didn't even go and see this property. So what happened here, this is a little bit more complicated, but then it makes it even more creative. You've got to become even more creative. This property was a 5-bedroom house in a lovely area. The chap that was selling it had bought it about 3 years earlier, give or take? Yeah, 3 years earlier, and he paid around £350,000 for it. Now, in his infinite wisdom, at the time, he didn't move in. His intention was to move in. I can't remember the circumstances, but he didn't move into the property. Instead, he let it to a friend of his. Now, what he also did in his infinite wisdom was he allowed his friend to draft the tenancy agreement. And his friend drafted something called an assured tenancy. Anyone heard of that? I hadn't even heard of an assured tenancy until we did this deal, because I'd only ever dealt with assured short-hold tenancies, which are your traditional 6-month, 1-year tenancy agreements. Well, an assured tenancy, which this was one piece of paper, just one-sided. That's all it was, one-sided document, and he had an agreement put down there for 20 years, 25 years? 30 years. It was a 30-year agreement at a rent of £650 a month, and the only person that could change any terms of that agreement was the tenant. So you can now understand why the vendor was in difficulty. So a few years on, the vendor, I always get the names mixed up, just quickly remind me the vendor's name. Luke was... Luke and Steve was the tenant. So Luke was the vendor, i.e. the person who owns this property and wants to sell it. The reason why he can't sell it on the open market is because he's got this wonderful tenant called Steve who won't move. Now, who's going to want to buy a property with a sitting tenant, right? With a 30-year agreement? Nobody. On top of that, we did since find out, when we sent an agent round to value it and a builder round, these guys, Steve, had about 100 reptiles living in that property. No word of a lie. I had one builder come back out of that property itching all over. He said, listen, I can't do this job for you because I cannot go into that house again. Right? He had 100 odd reptiles living in that property. So obviously, Steve and Luke had fallen out. Luke, the owner, has obviously gone online and said, I want to sell this property. By the time Thierry found out about it, he already knew there was another very big competitor online. And Luke, the owner, already told us what they'd offered. And I think they'd offered him something like 290 vacant and 210,000 if they buy it with the sitting tenant. So we already knew. For whatever reason, Steve wasn't comfortable to go ahead with it and trusted Thierry's French accent. So Thierry got involved with the deal and then brought me in on it. The difficulty was we had this tenant with, what's the Somerset accent called? What's it called? Cornish. We had this tenant with a Cornish accent, which I found very difficult to understand, who was being very stubborn, and it was not going anywhere, right? Because there's too many parties involved, they've fallen out. And when I did speak to Luke, the tenant, eventually when Steve said, yes, you can talk to him, he was very abusive on the phone. He said, listen, there's no way I'm leaving here, blah, blah, blah. I said, listen, I'm here to try and create a solution. I'm just in the middle, so you don't need to listen to me as a friend of Steve's. I'm just in the middle trying to create a solution. And then he started opening up a bit more, but it wasn't going anywhere. It just wasn't happening. So what happened was the deal wasn't going to happen. So I said to Thierry, look, let me just send a letter to him. We've got nothing to lose now. If it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't go anywhere. So I sent a letter to Steve, the tenant, Luke, the tenant, sorry. Steve, the tenant. Steve, the tenant. I sent a letter to Steve saying, look, obviously it's very difficult for me to communicate. I don't know what it is that you're after, but this is what I'm willing to offer. And I made up this random figure of, I said, look, if at any time you do decide that you want to leave, I'm willing to give you £18,361. I made it sort of an odd number so that he'd think I might have spent some time working it out, right? So I wrote this down, and that was the end of it. Left it. Didn't hear anything for a few months. And then suddenly I had this answer phone message left on my phone in that Cornish accent, which I can just half make out. And it said something like, "Oh, I'm not going to promise anything, but give me a call." That's it. We knew we had the deal in the bag then. As soon as I had that message, I knew there was a deal there to be had. So long story short, we had to do 2 separate deals here because the owner, Luke, couldn't know that we were doing a deal with Steve, even though he might have guessed. He couldn't know that we were doing a deal with Steve to have him leave, because we wanted to do a deal with Steve separately, so we know that if we do buy it, he does agree to leave, and we needed to do a deal with Luke, the owner, separately, so that he knows that come what may, whether the tenant leaves or not, we're going to buy it. Long story short, we agreed that property at £190,000 in the end. £190,000. We had a 2-year option agreement. Now the other thing was that Luke, the owner, did need some money. He needed some money at the time. You know, he was strapped for cash, etc., etc. So I agreed to give him £50,000 up front. £50,000 up front. It was an option agreement again, we didn't exchange. So I gave him £50,000 because he wanted that money to sort of live on and do whatever he needed to do. We agreed with Steve, the tenant, that we would give him £25,000 to leave. That's what we agreed on. It started at a lot higher, but that's what we agreed on. He initially wanted all the money up front. Obviously, we weren't going to do that. So this is what we said. He wanted 6 months free rent. He had a disabled daughter, so they couldn't really move until the term finished after July. So he wanted a 6-month, I said we'd give him a 6-month tenancy agreement from January to July. Yeah, a new tenancy agreement, an AST. So we tear up the old tenancy agreement, we give him a new tenancy agreement, we agreed to give him £6,000 up front, and we said the £18,000, whatever the balance was, he would get the day he leaves. The day he leaves, on 31st of July, as long as he hands his keys back and leaves, he gets the rest of the money. Fair enough? We end up with an empty property, we then do up the property, hopefully the reptiles have gone by then, and we then sell the property. What happened, as most things never go to plan, right? That's called life, and that's what we need to get used to in business. These things don't go to plan so that we can learn and grow. So what happened? He didn't leave. Well, actually, that's not true. He did leave. He left his wife. He left his wife during that 6-month period. So she's left in the property with her, unfortunately, a disabled daughter at the time. And so come 31st of July, he hasn't left. So what was the great thing about that for us? We just made another £18,000, right? He's forfeited his agreement, so we don't have to give that £18,000 to them. So that's an extra £18,000 we've made. All it meant for us now is that we had to go through the Section 21 legal eviction route. Now the great thing about it was we needed to go through that route, not only to evict them, but his wife and disabled daughter couldn't get rehoused unless we evicted them. Does that make sense? The council wouldn't rehouse them because they're in a house. So we had to go through the legal route, which was a win-win for her, and it was a win-win for us. And after a few months, obviously the whole thing ended up going on for another few months. And long story short, they left. Andy, again, went down to Somerset. He had to change his accent when he was down there. Imagine someone from Yorkshire going to Somerset, right? Honestly, it's like 2 different languages. So he went down to Somerset, he did the house up. We sold it for £335,000, making £90,000 profit. It was 110% return. Pretty good. Now, the great thing about these kind of deals, as I said earlier, is they're creative. They require you to get your brain in gear, they require you to sit in front of someone, they require you to have a clean heart, and they require you to be sincere and genuinely want to help people. Because I've talked to you about all the profit side of this, right? I've made it into a little bit of fun and sort of that way, but no. The serious side of this is that you really do need to want to make a difference to people. Same thing applies in your personal life, same thing applies in business. It is as simple as that. It is as simple as that. See, one of the things that I've learned to develop and still developing in life is detachment. It's such a powerful law, Deepak Chopra's law of detachment. Detachment means go for things, but don't hold on to them. Go for things, be committed to things. But imagine if you go around chasing things in life. Imagine what happens. Well, by definition, if you're chasing deals, they're running away, aren't they? That's the definition of chasing. If you're chasing something, it's going away from you. So the key thing about business generally, it applies to relationships. We've been in those kind of relationships, maybe in our younger days, where we're chasing a relationship, right? We're attached to it happening. Well, it's not going to happen, is it? So it's such an amazing experience to have in business is when things don't go well. It teaches you to step back, look at how you're operating and let go. And what it really does show is the power of doing what's right. And sometimes it might be at the expense of making a deal happen. But the crazy thing about it is, overall, you'll always do more business. You'll always do more business. This is a great example of that happening. We had to let go of that deal. We could have kept chasing it, but you've got to know, and it takes time and practice to know when you've got to let go, right? And this is one of the great things I'm going to talk later about having a team, to make sure that you've got people in your team that complement those kind of skills. So let's see where else we went from there. So obviously, as these things have gone on, this is because I've gone from being a one-man band to then working with other people. And one of the key things about what I'm talking about this evening is the power of working with other people. It really is the most amazing, powerful, beautiful thing that I've learnt to do, and now I'm reaping the rewards of. This is the deal that we did. It was the first deal actually that myself, Tim and Cherry did. It's currently a current deal. It only happened last year. And this is Roehampton High Street. For some of you who know where Roehampton High Street is, near Putney. It's a hair salon, and there's 2 one-bedroom flats above it. Again, this is such a great example of what patience can bring. This deal must have taken a year to happen. I mean, and the owner of this hair salon, a chap called Philip, has been at the salon for the last forever. I think 35, 40 years. He's getting on a bit, didn't want the responsibility of owning it, wanted some flexibility in his life, wanted to buy a villa in Spain, etc., etc., but was just a very difficult man to deal with. And difficult means, we all know what that means, right? Some of us look to our partners and say that, right? I mean, we know what difficult people are, right? Where you don't have flow in your communication, where logic seems to be very differently defined for each person. And this was an example where even the agent, the commercial agent that we bought this through, even he'd given up. He'd given up on whether this deal was going to happen. But we didn't. We didn't give up on him. We constantly looked at what it was that he needed, and I could spend a whole day talking about this deal alone in terms of the journey that we had with Philip. But really the point of it is, again, keep listening. And when you need to let go, just let go. And it was Philip that kept coming back to us eventually, because he knew that we weren't going to chase him on this deal. We did have to fulfill certain requirements. We did need to sort of time it in a way that he wanted. And the other key thing that made this deal finally happen was he wanted to be able to carry on running the hair salon. And he wanted some flexible terms to be able to do that. He wanted the flexibility to be able to stop doing it if he wanted to, so that if he bought his villa in Spain that he could leave. But he also wanted the flexibility because his daughter may or may not want to continue it. So we created some flexible lease terms. The great thing about this kind of deal, actually, number of things. It was also already income producing. So the 2 flats were producing an income in terms of rental. The hair salon was producing an income in terms of rental, in terms of for him obviously income, but when we bought it, we created a new lease for Philip. So we were able to get lending from NatWest. Very straightforward lending. I think we've got 60-65% lending, bought for 500,000. Refurbishment is about 250,000 for 2 flats. We've actually got planning permission now for 2 flats. One is in the basement where there's a beauty salon currently, and we've got a planning permission for a flat which is behind the hair salon. So we've made the shop smaller, and there's a flat that's going behind there as well. So that's 2 flats. I mean, that one's producing this year. That's going to make alone that one deal £800,000. Thank you. That's pretty good, right? These deals are out there. This is in prime, well, not prime London, but SW15. These deals are out there. They are out there, and they'll always be out there if you're open to letting those deals come to you. And that's where the practice of flow comes in. It's a practice. And that's what life is practice. So that's just giving you an idea of sort of the kind of deals that we've gone on to. We've done other deals now since then. So, steps to creating your flow. Now, look, a lot of this that's here, one of the key things about information like this is we've all heard it. We've all been to seminars before about how to create goals, how to set goals and etc. But there's a big difference between how to do something and doing it. Does everyone in the room know how to lose weight? What do you need to do to lose weight?
Eat less, move more.
Eat less and move more. And yet that's what, I don't know, it's a multi-billion pound industry right now, and it has been and always will be. But all you've got to do to lose weight is eat less and exercise more. So there's plenty of books about how to invest in property, isn't there? People write them all the time. People do seminars. People make millions out of seminars teaching people how to create wealth through property. But how many people do it? See, the thing about all this information is it's great, but it's stepping behind the information. See, what I've learned going through the ups and downs of life is about your mind and how that can play games with you. This thing up here, it is very, very tricky. And it's a bit like Rhonda Byrne. I don't know if any of you know Rhonda Byrne from The Secret. She talks about wild horses, and like the mind is like wild horses, and you've got to tame them. If you don't tame this thing up here, it will run like wild horses. It runs riot. So you've got to manage your mind. And it's a practice that you've got to do every day. And I was going to say struggle because that's the wrong word. I manage this every single day of my life. Every single day. Some people have to do it more, some people have to do it less, but it's no different to exercising. People spend more time working on the outside, don't they? How we look, or even going to the gym and exercising, but everything you need is actually in there. Imagine the amount of time that people spend on the mind gym. The mind gym. People don't even know that concept, but it's that thing up there that is going to dictate everybody's destiny. You can look as great as you like, you can have all the money that you like, but until we don't work on this thing up here, it ain't going to happen. So there's daily practices that you need to do. Just like I go to the gym, I now force myself to meditate because I don't always enjoy doing it. But I know the value of it. It's immense. One of the reasons why I get up so early in the morning to exercise is because it's twofold for me. Getting up early is a spiritual experience if you choose for it to be. When I take that 20-minute drive to Loughton, to the Bikram Yoga where I go, it's a really spiritual experience for me. So you've got to work on that thing up there. It's the only way that you can do, it says here establish your goals and why you want to achieve them. Well, of course you've got to do that. You've got to establish where you want to go and you've got to establish why you want to go there. If you want to go to Birmingham, why do you want to go to Birmingham? If you want to make a lot of money, why? Why is it that you actually want to make a lot of money? Because the guarantee is that it'll always come down to a feeling. It will always come down to spending time with your family, to making life better for your family. It will never be about the money. It's amazing. In January, I bought a couple of houses, right? And it was a big deal for me to sort of buy these houses because I've been trying to get them for a while and in the area that I wanted. And when it's happened after a while, it's like, okay, what's next? It's crazy. It really makes me realise that, you keep getting, but until you don't work on your own spirituality and work on being happy within, doesn't matter what happens outside. Imagine that. Imagine what life is like. Doesn't matter what happens outside. Doesn't matter what the weather's like. Doesn't matter what your financial situation's like. Doesn't matter who around you is ill. Doesn't matter that you feel peace all the time. And that's what life is all about. And that's why these challenges that we keep getting in our life every single day are there. Recently, I've not been feeling my flow in the way that I have been feeling maybe over the past 6 months. January came, we've been doing some great things in the business, and the last probably 3 weeks or so, I've not been in flow. And I've been making myself wrong about it, thinking, Jesus Christ, what is going on here? You're in your flow, you're not in your flow, you're in your flow. And you realise, this is just a practice. Just like there's light, there's got to be day. Just like you're happy, you're going to be sad. It's called the duality of life. So if we constantly start chasing being happy all the time, being in flow all the time, and not fulfilling on that, then you're not fulfilling your expectations, then you're disappointed again. And someone who's going through that process, now, if you looked on paper at my resume, I haven't got a single thing to complain about in my life. I've got the most amazing family. I've got amazing health. I've got an amazing business. I've got amazing business partners. I don't have any financial worries in my life. it's, if you looked at it, it's heaven. But do I feel heavenly all the time? No. Because I get caught in that hamster wheel myself of chasing. So I'm telling you, finding your flow isn't a place to get to. It's a place of practice. That's what finding your flow is. Practice the daily meditation. Practice the activities that are going to calm your mind. Know and recognize that what's going on outside in your life is not going to determine how you feel. But if you let it determine how you feel, that is why one day you'll feel happy and the next day you'll feel sad. I've been through that process of trying to understand it, and you know what? At some point you just got to let go. You've got to let go, and as Rhonda Byrne says, I'll tell you, Rhonda Byrne is an amazing, amazing human being. For those of you who haven't heard of this woman, she's the one who wrote The Secret and did the movie The Secret. But something that she's done which is even more powerful is called The Power. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's a book called The Power. You can get it on audio. And I've been in personal development for most of my adult life. That's 25 years plus. The Power has got to be one of the most powerful pieces of work you could ever listen to. It's the most simple, stupid way of actually achieving bliss. And all it's to do with is gratitude. All it is doing is being grateful for what you do have. Because as human beings, we spend more time looking at what we don't have than we do looking at what we do have. We all know, every single person around this table, I don't need to know your personal circumstances, but we all know, every single one of us knows someone in our life who's worse off than us. Financially, emotionally, personally, physically. Every single one of us knows someone who's worse off. Yet we'll focus more on what we don't have, the money we don't have, the health we don't have, the happiness we don't have. And what she talks about is just practicing gratitude. And the first step to it is just say thank you. Just say thank you. You know when you feel pissed off and you don't want to do any of that? There's times when I'm driving to my Bikram yoga class and all I just say is thank you on these lovely country lanes that I go down. Thank you. Just say thank you, even if you don't mean it, if you don't feel it, just say thank you. But you know what will happen? As you keep saying thank you, you'll suddenly become present. You'll become present to what you're saying. You can then suddenly start saying, oh, thank you for the lovely car I'm in. Thank you for the environment. Thank you for the air that I breathe. And then you start saying thank you for what you can be appreciative of today. And then you can start saying thank you for what you don't yet have. And that's called the law of manifestation. But anyway, enough about that. Have fun. If you create these pillars, if you just work on these, you know that you just need to work on these different pillars of life, right? There's certain pillars we don't work on because we don't have to. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to do yoga. But if you know that these are things that are right for you, I knew yoga was just right for me. It took me yonks. I've done it for years on and off. But only now that I've got the regular routine, I can't not do it. It's just something I'll never ever stop doing because I just know it's right. It's the ultimate mind body, that is. You've got to spend time working on all of this. So I talked about this wonderful mastermind group back in 2013. This was taken in Leicester Square, wasn't it? In the park in Leicester Square. So that's myself, Justin, Ed, some of you might know Ed Folks from the Canary, he used to run the Canary Wharf Inn. That's Tim Hodges, Thierry and Ben. So we still meet since 2013. We're meeting tomorrow every month without fail. We've created such a great friendship. Oh, that's the restaurant. Anyone been to the, what's it called? Spice Market. You know in Piccadilly Circus where the W Hotel is? No? You know where the old McDonald's used to be? On the corner? Right opposite that is a beautiful hotel called the W, and it's a lovely restaurant. If you haven't been there, try it out. It's called the Spice Market. I mentioned about Tim, Thierry and myself developing into Vincit Developments and